So next, I'm really excited to invite Heather Herring and Matt White from Indiana Department of Education. Heather is a public service professional focused on education, technology, and research. Her academic background in human-computer interaction, psychology, and education brings a well-rounded lens to her work with the Indiana Department of Education's Office of Digital Learning, where she supports course access and innovative and responsive technology use, including generative AI. So everyone, please welcome, sorry, Matt, I didn't have your bio. Yes, great. So Matt and Heather please invite Matt and Heather to the stage. Thank you.
All right, I can just qualify as I work with Heather. So yeah, thank you, for the opportunity to be here today. Like she said, my name is Matt White. I work with the Office of Digital Learning and with Heather, who was on yesterday's fantastic panel yesterday morning. So we're excited to be here today to talk about a large-scale pilot that took place across the state of Indiana during the 23-24 school year. The AI-powered, let me get this thing going. There we go. The AI-powered platform pilot grant supported a one-year implementation of an AI platform for schools that chose to apply and were approved for that. The goals there, mainly twofold: supporting high-dosage student tutoring, so the students being able to interact with the platform, and then also reducing teacher workload. As a local control state, Indiana schools were able to select the vendor that they wanted to work with, choosing a vendor that met the needs of their corporation, of their community. Those vendors that they wanted to work with did have to meet certain vendor requirements that the Office of Digital Learning published, and those included topics surrounding onboarding and training, technology support, safety, and functionality of the program. So 5 vendors were selected by the schools, and you can see those on the screen. It's worth noting that Conmigo through Khan Academy did represent over half of the choices that the school districts made. And then just to give you an idea of the kind of scope of the project, this grant incorporated there were 36 corporations who were awarded the grant. You can see that represents 112 individual school buildings, almost 2,500 school teachers, and over 45,000 students. So our guiding pillars of support for our office at the Indiana Department of Education, you can kind of see on the screen. The third one being access, which, through this grant, we wanted to make sure that we were providing, and then data and reporting, which will soon be kind of publishing a report that is related to this project that Heather's going to talk about now.
Thank you, Matt. So given that this was a pilot and it reached such a large number of teachers and students, we really wanted to get direct feedback from the teacher perspective, and we used an online survey to do so. So the teacher feedback survey was open for nearly a month and available to all teachers that were a part of the pilot. It focused on the overall impact for both teachers and students, focusing on strengths but also challenges. It included closed and open-ended questions, and we received 625 total responses. And here you will see the top types of teacher tasks that the teachers reported utilizing, with lesson planning, differentiation support, subject area knowledge support being in the top 3. And nearly half of our respondents said that they use the platform once a week or more. And we also wanted to get an idea of the overall impact. And here you will see 53% of the responses indicated positive or very positive impact on both student learning and teaching practices. And then the remaining 47% of those responses for both questions were mostly neutral. And here you will see the top responses to the impact on teaching practices. And this was from an open-ended question, with the number 1 item being saving time. So teachers talked a lot about how using the platforms for their own tasks save them a significant amount of time that could then be devoted to supporting students more directly. And then items 2 through 5 are closely tied to saving time because using the AI platforms for generating content, differentiating instruction, tracking real-time data and assessments, drafting communication to parents and colleagues are some of the top time-saving uses of generative AI for teachers, as you all know. And then extra practice for students is here. Even though this is, a teaching practice impact question, the teachers did bring this up quite a bit, mainly because there was the ability to bring students up to speed and reinforce the lessons that they were doing in the classroom, at home, and then also in the class. And then here you'll see the top responses related to impact on student learning, with tutoring, guidance, and feedback in that number 1 slot. Teachers talked a lot about how the platforms were able to guide students without giving direct answers, and then also provide targeted feedback to those students. And then a lot of teachers talked about how students really enjoyed using the platforms and even requested to use it often. And then again, extra practice and support comes up. Teachers talked about how the platforms help students review past content that wasn't yet mastered, take practice quizzes, assist with homework, and more. And then teachers reported that they felt the students who used the platforms showed some academic improvement, as well as increased independence and confidence, because the teachers said that the students could take ownership of their own learning by using the AI platforms to ask questions, and then the extra practice helped them feel more confident in their abilities. And then lastly, personalized learning. Teachers talked about how the platforms could be tailored to both student pace and level. So as with any tool, we know it's important to address the pitfalls and know that it won't work perfectly 100% of the time. So here you'll see some of the top challenges. These are the challenges that we saw in multiple open-ended questions. So the first one being how the platforms are designed, specifically related to navigation. Some teachers talked about how navigating the platforms for both themselves and their students could pose some challenges and led to some frustrations. And then also microphones weren't always accurately recognizing what students were saying, which is challenging for some platforms when, that's mainly what they're relying upon. And then lastly, there wasn't as much content for some subject areas compared to others, so the teachers didn't find it as useful to use as frequently as they would have liked. And now I'm going to turn it over to Matt, who's going to talk about some of the site visits that he went on.
All right, thank you. So, in addition to the data, we wanted to make sure that we had lots of experiences getting to see this grant in schools across the state. And we were lucky enough to receive lots of invitations to different schools, different grade levels. And, as a pilot, schools were encouraged when they were applying to kind of focus that grant to maybe focus on a certain subject area or a certain grade level, or, even down to the classroom level we saw sometimes. I think what you'll see is that some of these stories do connect to the data that Heather was speaking about. We visited, Heather talked about feedback, and we visited Newcastle High School, where the students there in a high school English class were really being taught exactly how to prompt the AI tutor in order to get different types of feedback about their writing. So they take a piece of their writing and then put it into that AI tutor and then get, that feedback with the questions that they were working on with their teacher. Talking to the students, one talked about how she used it to improve the verb choices in her writing. Another talked about using it to improve their sentence structure. One student talked about how she was stuck on a certain assignment and was able to, use the AI tutor to get herself unstuck. So really getting a chance to see, students feeling independent, right? Feeling empowered and doing some of that problem solving using that AI tool. Heather also talked about, student support and personalized learning at Hobart High School in a grades 9 and 10 science class. The teacher spoke about what she was doing with students. She really said that the platform had actually re-energized her. She called it something that she really needed. And in particular, she spoke a lot about the automatic differentiation that tool could do, where she could kind of give a certain prompt for the students to put into the AI platform, and then that AI platform was able to adjust, to provide more challenges for the students who needed that and more support for the students who needed that. So just a couple of quick stories that kind of bring to light some of that data. We are continuing our support of the artificial intelligence in the state of Indiana. We our kind of major grant, the digital learning grant, about half of the school corporations who applied for that grant had some sort of AI focus in their application. And then we just recently, just a couple of weeks ago, actually announced the grantees for a grant they called the AI Supported Alternative Education Grant. So 24 corporations across the state of Indiana are going to be using AI platforms to support alternative education programs.
So what we talked about today was really a data snapshot. It's, just a small sliver of what we have reported so far. So a full report will be released in the coming weeks, and it will include much more detail about awardees, the survey responses, and also vendor-specific data. So if you're interested, you could use this QR code and enter your name and email, and we will email the report to you directly. It will come from one of us. We'll only use it to send you the report, and that should be available in the next couple of weeks.
So we'll leave that up as we close here. We did save a couple minutes if there are any questions that anybody would like to ask about the pilot program or anything that we're doing. So we certainly welcome those. Sure.
So she asked what subjects were, the more challenging, or what subjects didn't have content as much as the others. Health was definitely one of the main ones. There was even a PE teacher who was using the AI platforms and said that that was a challenge, but definitely health was one of the main ones. We could probably just tell you what they are. So EDIA is one of them. Conmigo, like Matt said, was over half of the schools chose that. Amira, which focuses on literacy skills. I know I'm forgetting. School Joy, and and Chat for Schools by Skillstruck.
We are, but anyway, wondering how many of those teachers had prior knowledge, if any, of those, or of the teachers that use the pilot, because that number seems a little low to me, but if they're brand new users, that makes a lot more sense.
So she, if you couldn't hear, she asked about the 53% number and the prior experience of those teachers, and if they've used it before or they haven't. A big majority, we did ask a question if they've used that specific platform, and if they hadn't, what other similar platforms had they used prior. I would say majority never used the platforms that were being used for this particular grant, but there will be some further information in the report.
And then do you plan on surveying them later as well when they're more experienced users to see if the rates are going up?
So some of the schools, as Matt talked about, they are continuing next year. So we do plan to do a similar feedback just to see if it changes at all. Back there. Unfortunately, we did not. That can be quite challenging, especially because some of the students went all the way down to kindergarten. But we do hope to incorporate some further student feedback in further iterations. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks again for this opportunity. Really appreciate it.